Hello and welcome. Let's chat a bit about Dead Boys by Gabriel Squailia. And before you get creeped out about the cover, for anyone who might really not like horror, this is not a horror book. It is not a horror fantasy book. It is a fantasy. It does have elements of the macabre in it, but not what I would call horror. So don't worry if you are not a fan of horror and do not want to hear anything gruesome, because this book is all quite fun. So yeah, I originally read this last year. March of 2015 is what it shows, I think, on my Goodreads for having read this before. But I decided to, I'm in my December, my month of December is a month of rereading for me, and so I decided to have this on my rereading list for this year, and I am super glad I did. I had read earlier. This year, I read Viscera by Gabriel Squailia, and I really, really loved that too. Check out the video chat if you're interested to hear more about that. But I just love the way that Gabriel Squailia writes, and so I really wanted to go back into this world. This is the underworld, or should I say underworld. The land of the dead is where this takes place. So yeah, about the book, there's a little blurb down here at the bottom that says, if China Miéville, Neil Gaiman, and Hunter S. Thompson had a menage a trois, Dead Boys would be the love child. So, I might also add Charles Dickens, so maybe it would be a foursome, because Charles Dickens, the characters of Charles Dickens to me are so lively, and entertaining. And this book has lively characters. Sorry, even though they're all dead and in the underworld. And there's just a great cast of characters. In this book that just were a delight. But the main cast, so where we are is we are in the underworld. There's the river Lethe, that runs through the underworld in Greek mythology. And this river, the corpses when someone dies, that someone that's destined for the underworld, they're in this river, and so it causes a forgetfulness. So when they wash up on the shore in the underworld, they then go through this process that's called quickening, where they become conscious again, but then they don't remember a lot about their previous lives. But one thing they really do value, one thing that is really valued in the underworld, primarily in the main city called Dead City, is the physical appearance of living, so like the flesh. The people down there in the underworld, they tend to try to preserve that their look. It's sort of a mark of their, their individuality or whatever. They try to preserve that for as long as they can. And our main character in this story, Jacob, is a preservationist, so he is very skilled at sort of a sort of taxidermy, really, where he can actually preserve the skin and whatnot of people. And then he ultimately, though, has he's doing this to earn wealth. It's not really money. The currency of the underworld is actually time, but I won't go into that too much. But he wants to actually go and look for the living man, because the living man, there is this legend in the underworld that there was a person from the world of the living who came to the underworld and then was sort of lost there, never heard from again, and he wants to find the living man, because he feels like if he can find the living man, then he can figure out how to get back to the land of the living. And so ultimately he's joined by a little core group of characters. There is a young man, Remington, who they call Remington, who had committed suicide by shooting himself in the head. So he's missing like a lot of his head, but he's this light-hearted, free-spirited, gentle person that joins Jacob. Jacob calls him his ward. He's new to the underworld, and then Remington ultimately comes across this crow that has lost its wings, and Jacob sort of pieces the crow back together. So this reconstructed crow nests most of the time in the missing parts of Remington's skull. And then they ultimately come across a pair, a man and woman, who are headless, so they cannot talk, but they can sort of see through Remington. So they join their party, and they're called Adam and Eve. And then the other main character that joins this quest party, I call it, is a sort of a wisecracking dandy who is known as Leopold, who died by hanging. So his neck is broken, so he has a broomstick. He's trying to like keep his head up. But he's a very funny character, and so they all set out on this quest together. They do meet. Like I said, a lot of lively, get it, characters along the way, lively, wonderful characters that they meet along the way. They do ultimately leave the dead city because the underworld contains more than just this dead city. There's several other kind of locations, including a whole nother city that they eventually go to. But they do ultimately go on this quest together. And like any good quest, they encounter new ideas. They encounter new challenges, and they sort of grow and change as they proceed along in their quest, and they meet additional people, some of whom join them on the quest. There's just too many of these wonderful characters to go into, but they pop into the book periodically. We get to know them, and there's just a real fresh perspective. There's some philosophical elements, especially later on in the quest. There's a war. There's an ongoing war in the Plains of War where there's certain people in the underworld that they just continually fight. This ongoing war called the Scrimmage, and anyway, it's a wonderful quest to go on that I just really enjoyed going along with these characters. So. One thing I mentioned about how the characters during this quest, they sort of changed. The people in the underworld, of course, they have basically a lot of time, but they also need to sort of grow and try to change. And there's a really cool quote from the book that I just want to read here for a bit. Here it is. It's like the seekers need change, but they still can't stop themselves from resisting it. Anything that alters the fabric of their culture provokes this collective hissy fit, but they end up changing all the same. So, the seekers are a group of philosophers in the underworld, yes. There's just a lot of stuff. There's a lot of aspects to the book other than just this adventure, but ultimately it is a fantastic adventure. But the characters, really they're figuring out what they are, who they are, what they are, and where they're going and where they want to go. So that's ultimately, the challenge of the living, as well as the reader reading the book. So, I kind of thought that was kind of cool. So, that's kind of the gist of the book. I kind of don't want to give a lot more away because I don't want to definitely give away anything that would take away from the pleasure of reading it in case anyone is interested in doing so. Like I said, I found it enjoyable to read now twice. So you may not, others may like it and they may not, but I certainly did. And as far as Gabriel Squailia goes, any kind of quest that Gabriel Squailia wants to take me on, I will be watching for the next one to go on with the characters that they present, that they introduce me to. So I will close with that. I will have still a couple of books to go in December, still a couple of weeks to go, so I'm still doing my December rereads. So I will have additional chat videos coming up for those in the very near future, so stay tuned. Take care. Bye.